Structurally, the trade war with China is a huge loss for humanity. There's no other word for it. By bifurcating the technology stack between our two great nations, we are creating a world where, one, the Chinese have a huge incentive to engage in their Manhattan Project of semiconductor production. And the Chinese graduate about 4 times as many STEM graduates as the US does a year. I think we're pretty naive to believe that we will have a permanent dominance given the strength of their engineering capabilities. And then if you march forward 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, as the Chinese tighten the gap between the US and the West's capability and technology and their capability, I think you have the risk of a global fracturing of the tech stack, where you'll see the Wintel stack, Windows, Intel, of course, Intel today is Intel AMD, will be the dominant solution for Western firms, but the Chinese will provide the solution used by South America, used by Africa, potentially used by India. And that will really fracture Western domination in technology, which has been such an incredible source of high-paid jobs in America and American prosperity. I mean, for the state of California, the tech sector is just a huge part of the revenue tax base. The CHIPS bill is a really important piece of legislation. The United States has no ability to produce anywhere near the number of semiconductors it needs to run its economy. We are utterly and totally dependent upon the Taiwanese for modern semiconductors in America. Now, you could argue that by depriving the Chinese of access to semiconductors, we actually up the ante of the risk that they seize Taiwan. So it's not necessarily clear that we get the outcome that we want by depriving the Chinese of this technology. They could resort to other methods to secure this needed technology for their economy if they so choose. We're playing with fire here. Like, let's be very clear. Semiconductors, if we lose access to the Chinese or the Taiwanese semiconductors, hit to US GDP is probably order magnitude 5 to 10%. It's an immediate Great Depression.
Those are big numbers.
Those are big numbers. So the CHIPS Act, really important. Encouraging STEM degrees in America, really important. But what worries me is this sense in the halls of Washington that the West has a God-given right to be superior in its technological prowess when the facts would argue to the contrary. And we need to be very thoughtful about how our economy functions, what creates jobs in America, what creates prosperity for our country. And by forcing the Chinese to accelerate their R&D programs, I think we're buying very little in the way of strategic advantage at a substantial long-term cost to our economy and our way of life.
Let's talk about what's going on in those corridors of power in Washington. You've become one of the largest individual donors to political candidates in the United States, and as a result,